Welcome to this month's episode of the Thought Leadership for Educators webinar, brought to you by EdMoxie. At EdMoxie, we believe that implementation is as important as vision, and that innovation does not need to be complicated, just different. My name is Jeff Mao, and I'll be your host. This month's topic is applying digital citizenship skills in the classroom, brought to you by GoEnnounce.com, and we'll be speaking with one of the co-founders and CEO of GoEnnounce, Melissa Davis. Now on to this month's episode. Melissa, could you go ahead and just introduce yourself to our audience and maybe speak a little bit about how you got into the education space and what interests you most about digital citizenship? How does it become something that you really care about?
Sure. I'm Melissa. My background actually was as a film producer. I worked in the entertainment industry for about 15 years producing movies and got into the education world totally by accident, but it was a happy accident. My sister and I, when she graduated college, created a way, and this was just like a hobby, for kids to announce their graduations online. And this was before paperless post or any of those types of companies had a way for you to send online like Evite type cards. And we thought, why should kids pay to have to announce their graduations? And anyways, we gave kids a grad page, like as a landing page for who they sent these announcements to online. And we thought, kids are on social media. They already have enough of these pages. They're not going to build this page, but it was more a landing page. Well, what happened when we launched that company was this grad page was becoming the most popular feature, and kids were kind of going crazy talking about all the things they had done in school and what they were doing after they graduated. And what was even more interesting was the friends and family who would come and visit these pages. We had a comment feature, and all the comments were related to, I didn't know you were doing that, or I could have helped. And we thought, whoa, these kids are online all day, and they are not using it in a way that is benefiting them or helping them, and they don't understand it as a tool. And we thought that, this shouldn't just be a platform for them when they graduate. There should be a way for them to, keep in touch from a school and educational point of view and track what they're doing all year long. So my sister and I actually co-founded the website GoEnnounce, and it has become a digital portfolio tool for K-12 schools. They now use this in school, and it's kind of like a cross between a Facebook meets a LinkedIn, and it's a way for students to track and share progress. But that's how we got into the digital citizenship world, was just by accident, because seeing how kids were almost in a sense not being empowering digital citizens. They didn't understand the power of this tool that they had, and trying to teach them how to do it. And so we give schools this digital portfolio, but also give them a curriculum to use the tool to apply these lessons. And become, very passionate about it. I think, not just students are guilty of it, but adults are guilty of it as well. We're all online and very connected, but is everybody using this tool to the best of their abilities, or, to help us in a sense?
That's great. So let me just back up real quick and make sure our audience remembers, we're gathered today. It is Digital Citizenship Week. And so you stumbled upon it by accident. I'll share, I stumbled upon it by accident as well, but in a different way, which was, I was the education technology director for the state of Maine. And that meant I was in charge of our statewide laptop program. And so when we first started the program in 2002, we deployed tens of thousands of laptops, and we, told our schools, make sure you're doing internet safety. Somewhere around 2007-8, we started to deploy. We refreshed the fleet, and we had new laptops going out, and now the MacBook existed, and they had a webcam, and the kids were getting older. And I started getting phone calls from parents, what did you do? I said, what do you mean? Your kids had a laptop since they were a 7th grader. Now they're a 10th grader. And they said, yes, and my 10th grader is in his room talking to his girlfriend on video, and I don't know what's going on, and what am I supposed to do? And, and that's when I realized, oh, the internet has grown up, because when we started, things like YouTube didn't exist, Facebook didn't exist, the term Web 2.0 hadn't been used yet, right? So there were all these things that had changed from when we started in 2002 to now we're into 2007, 8, 9 time period, and the world has quickly evolved and changed. And that's really when I then stumbled into it and realized, okay, it's not just internet safety.
Mm.
Fortunately, that's when we as a state connected with Common Sense Media, and together they had this idea of, we're getting a lot of parents, because that was their primary audience, who are asking us these questions. What is this thing? What is Skype? I don't. Should I be worried about my kid using it? Or what is this? What is that? And they said, so we've created a parent curriculum to teach parents about what kids are doing. And we said, well, that's great. Let's help pilot that across all of our schools. But at the same time, what about the kids? And they said, yeah, we've kind of heard of that. And so together we started building out what is now, I think everyone probably knows, a huge curricula and resource coming from Common Sense. And we were kind of one of their major pilot sites for digital citizenship usage of that. But again, it is a curricula. And what I discovered then, even after I left the state working with them, was that there was this concept of, like anything, I know what the topic is, I have the knowledge, but do I have the skills?
Mm.
Right? So that's really, I think, where our conversation is taking us today, is we're thinking about digital citizenship, but knowing that it's, on one hand, it's a content area, so to speak. It's things you should know, but it's also behaviors and actions and how you go about doing things, and really trying to think about how do we make that happen. And that's really where the title of our gathering today, Applying Digital Citizenship Skills in the Classroom, comes from, is thinking about that. And so again, thanks, Melissa, for joining me in this conversation. So as we get into this, then, I just kind of framed this digital citizenship label. Do you have other thoughts? Like, if we throw this term around a lot, what does it mean to you, this notion of kind of digital citizenship? How would you define it if someone kind of came along and said, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's, definitely become a buzzword in education, and people know they need to educate the students. Yeah, it started with the parents and now the students, and nobody wanted to touch it for a while. No, we don't touch the internet. We don't, it's a scary thing. That's not our responsibility. It's the parents, but the parents needed education too. But, you know, I think it's, to me, there's no difference between digital citizenship and citizenship. It's just appropriate behavior, and everyone is online just as much as they're in the real world. I mean, kids, adults, were meeting people on online formats. So, you talk about safety, like internet safety. Okay, so what's the difference of, for being on a playground alone for the first time and stranger danger? And so you teach kids about that, or you teach them in school about, appropriate behavior when you meet someone. And so why aren't we teaching them that in the online world as well? And there should be no difference between offline and online, and digital citizenship versus citizenship. To me, it's just kind of, normal skills and behaviors, the same as shopping. Would you let your child go into a store with $10 without teaching them how to get change? No, the first time you're going to give them money, you tell them, make sure you come back with change. So now they have these tools and phones with credit cards already hooked up, and they aren't paying attention to what things cost or whose money it is because it's virtual. But are you teaching them to watch out for fees? And did they double check that it's cheaper here versus another website? And is that website reputable? So it's just basic behavior and again, like citizenship, that you would experience anywhere. And that's why I think it's not just this one-time thing. I think that schools talk about digital citizenship like it's just a topic we have to cover one time, but it should be, numerous in any subject area, and it's schools and parents and anybody who's involved in helping this young child become a functioning adult, just like anybody teaches them manners.
Great. So on one sense, I hear you saying that it's, people are people, whether they're separated through some digital medium or they're face-to-face in a store, on the playground, wherever. And so there's a certain sameness to this. At the same time, is there anything that you think that does the digital or the internet aspect of it, does it also then have things that we have to be aware of? Does it change things in some way? Or is the way in which we teach kids about, say, stranger danger and all of these kind of different ideas, are they really just the same, or is there some difference? Does the internet somehow amplify or change things in your mind?
I think if anything, instead of being less cautious, which I think people are, because it's like, oh, I'm behind a screen and they're not going to see me and I don't have to. If anything, it should make people more cautious of from everything, how anything that they say could be interpreted because it's written instead of spoken. And when I speak to you, I have tone and I have expressions. And when I just write something, you can't tell if I'm joking versus, if you're meeting someone and they say on an online chat room and they say they're 12, you don't know if they're 12 because you can't see them. So I think if anything, it should make us be more cautious and make us just kind of double check things. But I think unfortunately, the opposite happens. People are, oh, I'm behind a screen. It doesn't matter. I can say what I want. I can do what I want. I don't have to take the fact that I posted this picture and that I told you what location I'm at as seriously because I'm just hiding behind this device versus, like going back to the playground example, if I was alone in a playground at 10 o'clock at night and, was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I might be a little more cautious and looking behind me and, aware of my surroundings versus, I think if anything, we should be more cautious, which is not what's happening because people are feeling like they don't have to.
Right, right. Just to throw out there, this is a quick aside, but I was, randomly scrolling through some of my social media feeds the other day, and I saw a headline and I read a bit of the article about a Japanese pop star who was assaulted by a fan. And this fan tracked her down because she had posted a selfie of herself on the metro somewhere in Japan. And he zoomed in on the
Wow.
picture, looked at the reflection off of her eyeballs, and was able to figure out which metro stop she was at. And so was able to then track her down, knowing, oh,
Wow.
she gets off at this stop every day kind of thing. Really kind of scary in a sense. And of course, that's not really our goal with digital and with digital citizenship, is to scare people about, the kind of the bad scenarios that can happen. But it definitely gets brought up, and these are the kinds of stories that sometimes circulate through schools and then creates a panic. And, of course, then everyone's always saying, okay, so what are the schools going to do about that? So, in your experience working with a lot of schools, what have been some of the traditional ways that schools have tried to tackle this challenge of, digital citizenship skills and teaching skills to the kids?
Well, I think it's interesting. We have even in marketing. We'll talk to schools, and schools will say, "Oh no, we cover that already. We, have the police officer come in once a year and do a seminar on digital citizenship." And I think that going back to kind of this scare tactic and what not to do, that doesn't work. And then those same schools will kind of come to us later and say, yeah, well, we tried that. We had a lot of problems. And really our goal is to go in and change the conversation. And it's not about scaring them and telling them what not to do because, everybody knows kids. If you tell them not to do it, then they just want to do it. Or they think, oh, that's not me. And I'm not the one doing that. And, just because I talk to my friends and put this or that, I don't need to think something's bad happening. So we're more about empowering them. And I think unfortunately still, a lot of schools see digital citizenship as this one-time thing. We have to cover it, one time within the school, whether it's a seminar, whether it's a 10-week course that if I'm a middle school, I do once in 6th grade, or if I'm a high school, I do it once in 9th grade. And no, it's, kind of going back to these, it's everyday lessons and you're a citizen every day and we're constantly learning. It's something that should be covered in every classroom and every teacher. But I think that the other thing that happens in schools is as people are scared of it, you have educators who don't want to touch the subject because of, again, this fear that they aren't educated perfectly on it. Device use and social media and digital footprints, it's new for everybody. It's new. Adults, like, we didn't grow up with it. I didn't grow up using any of this. We didn't, barely had computers at school. And I think email came out when I was in college. So it was like, you didn't have this stuff. And so people don't feel educated. The parents don't feel educated to teach their kids. Everybody's learning as we go. And then the kids, just because they're on it and grew up with it, doesn't mean they know how to do it. So you also have these teachers that are scared, I think, to teach it. And really, again, it just needs to move away from this fear tactic and be more about empowering and recognizing it as a tool. And we're just going to teach you how to use it properly, because the reality is it's something everyone's going to be around. You have a digital footprint no matter who you are. Even if you don't have a social media account, you're still leaving a digital footprint in other things you do. You just can't really exist kind of in a 21st century right now. And when you talk about getting, jobs and college and things like that without understanding your digital footprint and understanding this technology as a tool. So I think it's more really about changing the conversation with schools, because and not all schools, because we have so many, like, going to Common Sense, all the Common Sense certified schools were some of our first customers, because they were recognizing that, hey, all this content is great, but we need to do more. They recognize that they need tools, and kids need constant involvement with it. Unfortunately, I think the mindset of digital citizenship and what it is and where we are and how we teach it isn't the same everywhere yet. It's very new, and there tends to be this fear factor. And I think it's more about changing it to, hey, these are tools, and they can be very empowering, and we need to teach people how to do it correctly.
Okay, so that's interesting. So what you're saying is, of course, and you're alluding to this idea that um, there's great content out there. As you mentioned, Common Sense Media, I think, is probably the best well-known provider of really high quality digital citizenship lessons,
Mm-hmm.
resources. But then a lot of folks are coming to you saying, well, but I need more. So when people say I need more, how is it then, like I was thinking about this myself. I remember back in the day, so to speak, I mean, literally last century, and I was in a computer lab, and, because I was the math teacher, so I got assigned the computer lab, and they said, here, Jeff, teach the computer lab class. And then the internet became a thing. So we brought the internet to the school for the very first time in the middle 90s. And so we said, okay, we need to teach the kids internet safety, right? And so we did that. And so there was this kind of instructional component, which is not that dissimilar to, say, like driver's ed. Like, okay, kid, double yellow stripe means this. You see a stop sign, it means this, and you have to do this. Blinking red means this, blinking yellow means that. And there's all this kind of knowledge and things, and you can teach those things. But that, we know, we would never stop there. We wouldn't then say, okay, kids, so you've taken this class, here's the keys, go ahead, you can drive now, like, because you passed the test. So then we have driver's ed. We put them behind a wheel, and we give kids an opportunity with guidance to practice, like, this is a full stop, and look both ways. Look left, right, and then left again before I make that turn. Or if I'm in Australia, look right, then left, then right. But whatever it might be, right? We give them that chance to do that. So where and how do we do that in a classroom setting, right? So that, and I think that's kind of one of these critical questions. As you said, like, we'd love to see this in all classrooms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every classroom teacher should be addressing this. But how is it that we address this in all classes? Like, is every single teacher supposed to be doing stranger danger lesson plans and things like that? Or is there another way that we can think about how do we apply these skills, or give kids a chance to practice these skills in any class?
Yeah, exactly. No, I think the driver's ed example is the perfect example from a digital citizenship perspective, because yeah, we wouldn't just let them just read and watch videos without practicing driving under supervision. And same thing, there's so much great content about digital citizenship out there. And yes, Common Sense being the leader, and they have amazing content. But I think that a lot of what happens with online is people think, oh, that's not me. I'm not doing anything wrong. And they read that, and I'm not the one that needs to be nervous. And until you actually see them using social media, or using, the answer to your question is, I think you need to do stuff with them. Okay. So whether if you're in art class, it's about finding some sort of collaboration tool where you're allowing them to collaborate online in group chat situations, or sharing each other's work and give feedback. Because through that, as the art teacher, you're able to see their digital communication and their literacy, and how are they communicating to each other, and are they joking, and is someone saying my project is better than your project? I mean, that's not being polite. That's an example of cyberbullying. Are there digital literacy skills that you could be addressing? So then all of a sudden the art teacher is addressing digital citizenship, because that could be happening in an unsupervised setting, which could unfortunately then get the child in trouble in another way. I mean, look at what happened with the Harvard students, that incoming class of Harvard freshmen 2 years ago that, were circulating Facebook messages, and they thought it was a private group. So now all of a sudden, as the art class, you're giving kids a medium to practice these online environments. And I think it's about those types of things in every classroom. I mean, a math class, you could have a class Twitter page. I know certain things aren't appropriate. You can't follow your students on Facebook, and certain things like that aren't appropriate for teachers and students to communicate. But it doesn't mean there aren't other elements of digital communications and digital digital tools that just because you're not the social studies class or the English class or the one-time digital citizenship seminar that you can bring into your classroom that represent these 21st century soft skills that these students need to be learning, like a class Twitter page that is talking about what you did in math and where you guys are, and taking turns with the students posting, because they're doing reflection. They're having to put into words what they learned and where they're at, and then looking at it as a class. And does everybody agree that this is what we accomplished this week? And is this how you would reflect on this? And then again, literacy. And so I think that there's ways to kind of think outside the box about how to bring in technology. And you know, if in the class Twitter page they're tagging a location that they're at the time, you know, talk about why that's safe and why that isn't safe. I mean, you know, sure, like let's say they took a field trip. Should you post about the whole entire class being at this museum or wherever they went while they're there? No, because that's dangerous. You're telling someone that the entire class is there right now, or versus a child that's doing it, that's telling someone that, you know, no one's home, like kind of relating it to that, and if they're doing it on their own. But you can post it later when you're all safely back at school and say, you know, today we went on this trip and did XYZ. So I think there's ways to, you know, incorporate things into every classroom and subject area, which is, you know, not to talk about our product, but what we do with these portfolios. It's about reflection and posting and having it be something in every classroom that can be used.
So thanks. Thinking about, you know, something else that you and I talked about once previously, and I'll just bring it up and you can kind of dive into it, is you talked about kind of this notion of reframing the digital footprint, right? And how, you know, there's a different viewpoint of that. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that it goes back to this idea of empowering students and encouraging their voice, and recognizing that just like their voice in, you know, the physical sense, it's strong and it's a tool and it's going to get them places and being able to communicate and talk. And the same with your digital footprint. You have to think of your digital footprint as your online voice, and that doesn't have to be always scary and bad. And I think there was this mentality that I believe is starting to change, and it should change, of, you know, I need to hide and I can't have social profiles, and if I do, then they have to be fake pictures, or, you know, like what you see with these kids in their Instagram accounts, and they have their fake Instagram that, you know, is only for a few people, and then they have their other Instagram. And it's more about this idea of, again, kind of empowering them, and you know, not hiding behind, you know, pictures or being scared to put it out there, but teaching them how to do it safely, and teaching them how it is a tool, even from a college and career readiness standpoint. I think that we have to recognize that today's students live in a world where they're going to meet people in online settings before they're going to meet people in the physical sense, and that these people, whether they're admissions officers, internship employers, or employers, are going to be Googling them and seeing who they're talking to. And they don't do it because they're trying to police people. They're doing it because they want affirmation that, you know, you are who you say you are. If you're sending me a resume, it's kind of like, okay, well, let me just see if I can find anything out that confirms this. So recognizing, like, what else are you putting out there in the world? You know, if you are applying for, you know, again, maybe you're into, you know, communication and videography and applying for something, if you don't have a public YouTube channel that's also kind of showcasing things that, you know, are the work you're saying you're doing on a resume, someone's going to question, well, did they really do that? Because I don't see any proof, and it doesn't mean what you just sent me. I want additional proof. So if they're Googling you and looking for things and they can't find anything, that's almost becoming just as scary, because then it thinks, well, what are you doing out there that's so bad that I can't find anything about you? So I think it's about, you know, reframing it is more about recognizing that this is a very powerful tool that can help you, and it's not something to be scared of. It's more, let's just teach people how to do it properly and encourage positive behavior.
Thanks. So I wanted to ask you also about your thoughts on, like, what's the role of the adults in the space, both whether it's the formal educators but also parents, and others, what role do they play as a mentor or as a guide or a teacher, an educator? Where's the line? What should they be doing? Because I think sometimes folks feel like, well, I should be, they're trying to kind of hem the line, like as a parent, between being the helicopter parent, but at the same time, they don't want to be like not there and have their kid go down the wrong road, so to speak.
Mm.
Um, so what is the role of parents and teachers in this?
I think, to me, it's really more about mentoring versus monitoring. When you talk about the helicopter parent, it's kind of like, oh, what are you doing? And don't do that, and don't do that, and don't do that, and being nervous, and mentoring is more about, hey, okay, I'm going to show you how to do this, and let's do this together, and allowing you to go out into the world and, make mistakes. Like if you're teaching a child how to ride a bike, the reality is they're probably going to fall down a couple times before they can read it carefully. Are you not going to make sure if they fall, it's not down a big hill, or maybe put knee pads on them, or whatever you want to do? But it's just, you're going to do it more cautiously. So the same thing, I believe, goes for, teaching them how to navigate the internet positively. You can't say, oh, no social media accounts, after a certain age, because probably the reality is then they're going to go do it behind your back. So would you rather have them do it and teach them how to do it, and not just pretend they're never going to do it, or how to share their location safely, or, profile photos and what's okay and not okay, and that type of thing? We have, as part of our platform, one of the things that we do is we monitor student behavior. So there's actual, human monitoring service that looks at posts and what students are sharing and commenting if they're commenting to others. And we issue what we call behavioral notifications or cause for concern notifications. So they recognize that they are being watched, and not in a way, again, that they're being policed, but it's this way that, hey, we're giving you this tool, and it's a tool where, just like anything else, if you have a class Twitter page, for example, you're letting that child who's allowed to post that week post whatever they want. But if you're going to watch it and you're going to give them directions, and so with these notifications, it's the same type of thing. If we see things that are not appropriate, or they violate the terms of use, so they're cyberbullying, it's taken down and ideally addressable as a teachable moment and notified. But also same with cause for concern, where you're encouraging them to have a voice, and sometimes you're able to catch things you wouldn't otherwise catch. And we get so much feedback from schools because, at first they're scared of this, and and they don't want to allow students just to, write whatever they want. But then you realize, hey, would you rather have them do it here, or where they're being supervised and we can teach them if they make mistakes, or would you rather have them do it in places that you can't see, and then those mistakes can sometimes be detrimental to their future? If it's, look at the example of the, Miss Teen USA, or I think, a lot of people know stories of, social media accounts that way back then someone found something and it represents, something negative that happened or got taken away because of something on a social profile? Or would you rather, have them do it in those ways where it can hurt them? Or would you rather have them, again, do it in a place where you can teach them why that maybe wasn't right or wrong? So it's about, empowering and really being a mentor instead of saying no and not allowing it.
So you alluded to your platform. So, and again, if for those who weren't here at the very start, we talked a little bit about the fact that, you've got your company GoEnnounce provides a platform, but fundamentally it's not a digital citizenship platform, right? It's actually just just a student digital portfolio tool, right? So it's a place where schools and with students are using it in order to have student digital portfolios, so they can record and archive and manage, digital artifacts from schoolwork and projects and things they're doing. But maybe, without getting into too great a detail, and we don't want to do it like a sales pitch, but just in
Yeah.
general, how is it that a digital portfolio tool, which I think everyone kind of has a sense of what that means, right? How is that something that can be leveraged to help teach digital citizenship?
Well, our digital portfolio mirrors how kids use social media. So it's set up to be a tool where they're posting just like you'd post on a Facebook or LinkedIn page. And then there is different collaboration and feedback tools, like a comment, they can comment to each other or get comments from followers or parents or teachers. So then these digital citizenship lessons just kind of come by default, by active use of this. And I think any type of tool where you allow student collaboration or you allow student reflection and communication is giving a classroom a tool where they can impart these lessons. So whether, it's a digital portfolio or, again, different, kind of class social media accounts, and, not just to talk about our product, but even, things like different learning management software where they, again, have this collaboration where the teacher can give feedback to the students, or they can collaborate on different assignments. Like, all of these can be very powerful digital citizenship tools where they're applying these lessons instead of, and I think that, but the most important thing is, I think that teachers and educators realize that a lot of the different ed tech tools out there, we use them for convenience, or they're fun. Like if it's a learning application and they're collaborating, or, tracking things, and have a comment feature back to back after the lessons or something like that. But that they aren't just, they're recognizing the digital citizenship lessons that can come out of that. So while our digital portfolio, we give schools a specific digital citizenship curriculum that integrates with the tool and reminds them, hey, just like when they're posting, this is an example of how you should be aware of their digital footprint and digital literacy. That can happen with almost any ed tech tool where they are, having to communicate with another person or track something. That should be an element of reflection, and just kind of recognizing that all of these tools are, can be digital citizenship teaching moments, I think.
So you used a word a couple times in that response, reflection. Can you talk a little bit more about what to you is the value of reflection in the kind of context of digital citizenship? Why is reflection such an important component?
Well, I think it's one of the most important components, because reflection represents digital communication. And again, when you're talking about, communication and voice and where it gets us in the world, your digital communication and being able to communicate what you've learned, or, what you've accomplished, or your takeaways from anything, whether it's an extracurricular or a group lesson or something like that. Those are that step of being able to cohesively think and recap is the final step of learning in anything, I think. So if you go, for example, on an interview, and you have your resume in front of you that talks about all of the, things that you did, if your employer or potential employer asks you a question about any of those experiences, you have to be able to verbally communicate probably a lot more specifically about what you learned or what you did on that item on your resume. And the same thing goes, that's an element of reflection. You have to be able to communicate what you did in that previous job. And that element of reflection there is going to get you the next job, hopefully, or a promotion at your job or something. And so I think that element of reflection is one of the most important elements of learning, and I think it often gets left out of learning because, there's so much to accomplish in the day-to-day lesson plans of teachers and activities and everything everybody has to get through. And it's more about, let's just take the test or read the chapter or do the project. And we don't have time to make them reflect or talk about it or have discussions about it. But, again, it's not just digital, but digitally they need to be able to write it and put it into words and communicate what they've done, because they also need to be able to speak it. Because if I can't describe to you what I just learned or what I just did in that previous job, then did I really do it or did I really learn it? Because that's what an employer is going to think in the interview if I ask you about it and you can't communicate to me what you just did.
Right. So, and I remember when I was looking at the platform, one of the requirements, anytime anyone posts an artifact, so a student chooses to post a photograph from a project they did, right? Because they couldn't post because maybe it was a physical three-dimensional diorama of something.
Mm.
They took a photograph of it instead to make for the digital portfolio. They're forced to write a reflection, right? So that that's the really critical learning piece. But at the same time, then from the digital citizenship side of things, that's part of the, what common sense would often call the stop, pause, and think.
Mm.
Because I'm
Yeah,
posting this picture. Well, why am I posting this picture? Is this the right picture?
exactly.
Right. So
I
thanks
love
everyone for tuning in today.
it. Yeah,
And
thank
thank you
you.
again, Melissa, for joining me and talking about digital citizenship, really a critical conversation for everyone to be having, and particularly this week, Digital Citizenship Week, really good to have this and good to have others thinking about this topic as we work with our kids.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everybody for joining.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Visit edmoxie.com/webinars to learn more about and register for our next live webinar, as well as watch archived copies of past episodes or listen via podcast. Music is On the Verge, provided by josephmcdade.com. This work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International License.